Coming to you from the desert of Las Vegas.
Vegas, baby!
Thomas Viola is here to talk to the best bookmakers and bettors in the business on a quest to cash tickets and build bankrolls.
Show me the money!
From picks to processes and more, it's time for the Degenerate Sports Betting Show.
Hello, everyone. I'm Thomas Viola, and welcome on into the Degenerate Sports Betting Show, brought to you by the FTN Network, where you can get all the sports betting and fantasy content your degenerate heart desires from some of the sharpest minds in the business. Use the promo code DGEN for 20% off your FTN subscription. That's DGEN for 20% off at FTN. Thank you so much for checking out the show, and don't forget to subscribe to the FTN channel on YouTube, and of course, rate, review, and subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Give us those sweet, sweet 5-star reviews. Any 5-star review I get, I'm going to read out on the show. So please start bringing them in for us. We'd appreciate it. Also, before we get going here, don't forget, join FTN's March Madness Bracket Challenge. We are giving away $1,500 with a grand going to first place, $350 to second, and $150 to third. Enter with the link in the show description below for your chance to win. This is your last chance, no matter when you're listening to this, because we're going live on Wednesday. Thursday tournament games start, so get in now. And March Madness, of course, is officially here. We have 2 more first 4 games today, and then, of course, day 1 of the big dance to discuss tomorrow. So coming on to break it all down, the host of the Coast to Coast Hoops podcast, G-Unit himself, Greg Peterson. How are you doing today, Greg?
I'm doing great, and you know what? It's that time of year that I remember where True TV is with regards to my rotation of channels, because it typically doesn't get a lot of run, but these next few days, it certainly is.
Like Mariah Carey at Christmas time, True TV and Dick Vitale emerge from the depths for this month alone.
Oh, it's absolutely terrific, and it's great to be on with you, Tom. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for your time today, Greg. You have one of the most encyclopedic college basketball minds that I have ever seen. Obviously, you have a fantastic following with your show, and you are the man when it comes to hoops. That it's in your name. Let's get off and started here. The first game up, Rutgers versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame's hanging 1 point or so around here. It's been all over the place. What are you thinking in this first 4 battle?
I want to brighten this up for DK Nation today, and I'm going to be taking a look at Rutgers on the money line. I do think that Rutgers just a little bit better than Notre Dame in this spot, because you got a Notre Dame team that they're outside the top 150 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they just have a tough time of being able to pull down rebounds in general. You've been able to get some very good production out of quite a few of your backcourt pieces. I know that you've been able to have Princeton Hub be able to do a little bit of better job recently. He and Trey Wirtz, who were really heart and soul pieces for the team last year, were a little bit of afterthoughts towards the beginning part of the season. They've been able to come on along with Blake Wesley, being able to take mid-range jumpers. But as we know, mid-range jumpers are a little bit inefficient. And I do think that Rutgers going to be able to do a solid job with their defense of being able to hold in this game and be able to win it outright. Ron Harper Jr. going to be a tough matchup for this Notre Dame team. Guy that stands right around 6'6", 6'7". Obviously, he's got some good bloodlines in him. Shoots 39% from 3, and it's a Rutgers team that they do a good job of pickpocketing as well. Caleb McConnell is able to give you right around 2.3 steals per contest. Rutgers as a whole, despite being in the bottom 100 with regards to possessions per game, they generate 7.5 steals per game. Paul Mulcahy has been able to give you 5 assists per game. So you've got a lot of good balance when it comes to this Rutgers backcourt. And then on top of that, you've got the most dominant post player in Cliff Amarui, who's able to give you 8 rebounds per game. So I think that Notre Dame is going to be up against it. Got 2 teams that play at a relatively slow pace. And I do think that the advanced defensive team in Rutgers going to be able to win out. So I like Rutgers to be able to get the job done on the money line.
Now, yesterday, Jeff Parles was on the show, our good friend. He says if Rutgers can win this game, he likes him to actually beat Bama. What do you think about that?
I think it's going to be a little bit tough regardless of who winds up being able to win this game to knock off Alabama. Now, Alabama is such a Jekyll and Hyde team because they wind up losing to a Georgia team that wound up, being coached by Tom Green during the season. I say wound up because he is now fired, and rightfully so, with the job that he wound up doing at Georgia. But with that said, they wound up losing that game. But they also knocked off the 2 teams that wound up going to the national title game last season in Baylor along with Gonzaga. And that Gonzaga win was in the state of Washington. So they clearly have had some of their best to be able to come out this year, and some of their worst has come out this year as well. So it's an Alabama team that is all over the place. I just think that they've got too much talent to wind up getting taken down by either Notre Dame or Rutgers. I just think that the guards out there in the backcourt, they're a little bit too big. They're a little bit too strong. And Alabama's actually done some of their best work with regards to outside shooting on the road. They are a team that they shoot right around 28% from three in Tuscaloosa. In a road and neutral court environment, Alabama's been able to shoot more in the mid-30s from three-point range, which I find to be surprising. So I would like Alabama, regardless of if it is Rutgers or Notre Dame, that winds up being able to survive and advance.
The other game today, Wright State versus Bryant in a battle to get baptized by Arizona. Wright State -3.5 right now in this one. Who are you feeling is going to come out on top and enter the tournament as the 16?
I think the money is moving in the right direction. When you wound up seeing this on Selection Sunday, Bryant was finding themselves more around a 2-point underdog in a lot of spots. Now we're at 3.5, and I saw Wright State as a 5.5 point favorite. You take a look at this Bryant team, and they do have the nation's leader in scoring in Peter Kiss, a guy that's able to give you 25 points per contest. Problem is, he's not very efficient. You don't have a single guy on this Bryant team that shoots above 34% from three-point range. And Bryant, they rank in the top 15 in all of college basketball in terms of possessions per game. They play at warp speed. They turn the ball over right around 13.5 times per game. And I do think that there is something to the NEC, just not necessarily being the same level of competition as the Horizon League. And we see that with Robert Morris, a team that they really had some good years out there in the NEC. They wound up going over to the Horizon League, and in 2 years, they've gotten their butts kicked in both years. So that is a little bit of an issue. Meanwhile, with Wright State, Tanner Holden, he does a great job for the team. 20 points, 7 boards. Got a Wright State team that overall, they're only shooting about 32.5% from three. But if you take a look at the last month and a half, they've been shooting more in the high 30s from three-point range. I think that they should be able to control things down low. Hal Eliseus for this Bryant team is able to give you 3 blocks, and Charles Pride gives you 18.5 points, 8 rebounds per game, but not a lot of depth there for a Bryant team that they like to play up tempo. I think that they're going to wind up waning a little bit in this game. So I like Wright State. I was willing to set them as a 5.5 point favorite, and cannot be understated as well. Wright State is a campus that is right around 20 miles away from Dayton. So they've got home court advantage pretty much as well.
That's a great point right there. I mean, home court advantage in these early rounds can really play a big factor. I think that's going to be the difference in Colgate versus Wisconsin. Everybody loves picking Colgate right now. I'd love to be with them, but I don't know. I'm thinking Wisconsin in that one.
I agree with you. It's a case of which I'm willing to take the points with Colgate. I wound up saying them as a 6-point underdog, but if this were a game that were played in, I mean, insert Oklahoma, just some more neutral state, I would probably be taking a little bit more of a look at Colgate to be able to survive and advance. In this spot, I just can't do it. And I mean, it is a Wisconsin team that they've had their warts recently. Whenever Johnny Davis is not 100%, it is a team that struggles, and Colgate is a team that we all remember. They wound up putting up 100 points against your Syracuse Orange earlier in the year. That was not necessarily the world's greatest look when you wind up giving up 100 points to a toothpaste. That's not great. But with that said, it is certainly something where I do think that the location of that game does matter so much. So I don't think that can be understated.
I completely agree. And that was just such a painful loss for what was a brutal Syracuse year. One to forget for sure.
All you need to do is get in the tournament, and then all of a sudden, with the Syracuse 2-3 zone, every single March, it's as if pixie dust is thrown on it, and nobody can figure it out. It's absolutely hilarious.
It's my favorite thing about this team. If they could just get to the dance, they're an amazing ride, and it's always fun. Sadly, not to be this year. Oh, well, we retool for next year. But we do, of course, have 68 teams in the dance. Who do you think is going to be the last one standing? That's the first question I want to get off the bat here. Who's your pick to win it all?
I've got Kansas. I really like the way that Remy Martin was able to come on in the final 2 games of the Big 12 tournament. And this is a guy that when he was at Arizona State last year was averaging 19 points, over 3.5 assists per game. He's able to give you a steal per contest. This is a guy that legitimately had All-American hype coming into Kansas this year. He was banged up throughout much of conference play. Him being back at full force is absolutely massive for this team. And you just take a look at the draw as well. We mentioned that Colgate versus Wisconsin game. I mean, even if Wisconsin gets by Colgate, which I think that they are going to, they're a week 3 seed. Auburn has done nothing outside of the state of Alabama since January. So they're a team that I don't think is really going to be able to pose much of a threat. Iowa is a bunch that they wound up winning the Big Ten tournament, but we both know this. Iowa is a team that they don't play a lot of defense outside the top 130 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. So I think that you've got a lot of vulnerability in that region. And then when you take a look at Arizona, you've got your injury concerns with Kirk Risa. That has me out on them a little bit more. Baylor's without Jonathan Chamwa, and with Gonzaga, I have them as my number one power rated team, but you just take a look at the draw that they get. They have to likely go up against Memphis in round number 2. And even if it's Boise State, that's a tough out as well. You probably are going to be facing up against either UConn or Arkansas in the Sweet 16. And then if you wind up getting to the Elite Eight, Texas Tech wound up playing against this team earlier in the season. Texas Tech held Gonzaga to fewer than 70 points. Duke wound up knocking off this Gonzaga team when they are out in Las Vegas this year as well. So Gonzaga just did not wind up getting a very good draw whatsoever. And I think that it's going to be tough for them to be able to make it to the Final Four.
I'm completely with you on that. I'm really looking for a yes/no on Gonzaga to the Final Four, because if I can get no for a tiny bit of plus money, I'm going in on it. I think the road's too tough, and I am absolutely a Gonzaga hater. I always think this team comes into the tournament overrated because the Mountain West. WCC, sorry.
I do think that they're a team that they're relatively solid. I mean, Drew Timme, Chen Holmgren, they're absolutely amazing. But at the same time, we wound up seeing it out of conference as well. They had a tough time with Tarleton State earlier this year as well. I don't think that this is as infallible of a team as a lot of people want to make them out to be. And I do think that Gonzaga certainly does have their warts as well whenever they wind up getting pushed a little bit out of sorts with regards to tempo. You wound up seeing that earlier in the season when St. Mary's was able to get them.
And I completely agree there. Plus, Jeff Parles also brought this up yesterday. What was it? 2015 Kentucky, one of the best basketball teams that we've ever seen at the college level. They didn't even win it that year. This is a tough tournament to go out and win. And I'm just not on the Gonzaga train.
Yep, I agree with you. I do think that the futures market just way too low on them. I mean, should Gonzaga be the favorite in the futures market? Yes. Yeah. 3-1, that's just not a price that I'd be willing to take with darn near everyone. That's what like Zion Williamson and company was a few years ago with Duke, and they didn't even make it to the Final Four that year as well. Now, we remember last year, it was all chalk with Gonzaga versus Baylor. I just don't see that this year with the way that things are just so tightly knit in college basketball.
I think this is going to be a really fun tournament. One thing I've noticed, you kind of beat me to it. I was going to ask, what do you think of all of the 1 seeds, but you already got me there. A lot of people are liking UNC to topple Baylor in the round of 32. What do you think? Would you be on that as a potential scenario, or are you saying that Baylor might get filled up elsewhere, maybe a UCLA, St. Mary's, Purdue, or Kentucky?
I think that Baylor's going to be able to make the second week just because with North Carolina. It goes back to my point on Iowa. I mean, North Carolina does a great job of being able to shoot threes. They make right around 37 to 38% of them. Brady Manick is a guy that I like with his versatility, but they just play no defense. They're actually one of the best teams in all of college basketball, not allowing you to get a second chance, but they give you a wide open first chance. So that winds up mitigating that quite a bit. And Baylor, one of the best teams in all of college basketball with regards to defense as well. Top 15 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, even without Jonathan Chamwa. I know that you've got Armando Bacot down low, but you've got Flo Thamba, who I think is going to be able to do a solid job along Jeremy Shane. So I think that Baylor has enough to be able to get the job done. And on top of that, when Baylor typically has their deficiencies, it's because James Akinjo gets loose with the ball. And this is a North Carolina team that they just don't generate any turnovers. So I think that that's actually a relatively solid matchup for Baylor.
All right. Well, there we have it there. Now, before we let you go here, I want to ask you, what are some of the metrics that you're looking at when you set your numbers, especially when it comes tournament time? What are the factors that you look at in a team and makes you go, this is a good tournament team? Obviously, matchups also come into a big play, but just walk me through what it is the process for you when you're setting your number.
I think a big thing is taking a look at how teams are performing on the road. A big reason why I am not necessarily in on Auburn is because we wound up seeing it from them late in the season. They very nearly lose on the road against Georgia and Missouri, and then they wind up losing a lot of those road games late against a team like in Arkansas, which that's a tough place to play. No fans or buts about it, but you can tell that they just have not been the same when they stepped out of the state of Alabama. Meanwhile, you've got some of these teams I do like as mid-majors, like a South Dakota State, because when it comes to like the Big Sky, the Summit, like you've got so much travel with regards to those conferences that they're already used to that grind. They're already used to being uncomfortable, having to go on the road in inclement, just travel situations in general that are several hundred miles via plane, and then you have to take a bus ride over there as well, places that are tough to get to. So I do think that is something that is very important this time of year. Teams are flexible like that. And then free throw shooting. It's absolutely massive this time of year because you're going to find a lot of tight games. There is nothing worse than laying like 4 or 5 points with a team that they're up by 5 with a minute left to go, but they're shooting 65% on the free throw line. And look who's coming to the free throw line to try to secure your bet. Captain McUncoordinated Jr., 7'1" with a career 41% free throw shooting percentage. And you want absolutely no part of that. We all find ourselves in that situation, and every one of us hates it. So that is something that I try to avoid if at all humanly possible.
I absolutely love that. And that is a fantastic point about teams being comfortable on the road, especially in those conferences where, and Lord knows from Syracuse, at least we had an airport, but a lot of these places don't even have a major airport near them. And it's such a long journey for some of these teams. And you're right, that can really help come tournament time. What about things like just defense versus offense? I feel like it's so hard to win 6 games in a row, but if you're an offensive team, the deck is even further stacked against you because you have a bad shooting night and your tournament's over.
I do agree with you there. And typically we do find with regards to tempos as well, it's a little bit easier to slow down a fast team rather than it is to speed up a slow team. Now, there are a couple tempo setters out there. With Iowa, it just feels like every single game that they wind up playing, they're going to give up north of 70 points. They're going to get their 75-plus points. I mean, that's a little bit of an outlier. When you do wind up getting into this, obviously, this team is not in the NCAA tournament, but the Citadel, they just give up 80 points on any given night. They just give up wide open bucket after wide open bucket, and everyone winds up having a field day with that. But with that said, typically, it's much easier to be able to slow a game down than it is to be able to speed one up. So I do think that defense is very big, and you just want to be taking a look at consistency as well. Because when you notice teams with regards to three-point shooting that you noted, they like shoot maybe 38% from the three. Take a look at if it's like a whole bunch of like 2 for 12 one night, and then the next night they're like 10 of 16, and then it's back to 2 for 12, and then it's another 10 for 17. List goes on and on. Try to take a look if they're like maybe 7 for 18, and then 8 of 18, and then 6 of 18. Just try to find a little bit of consistency with that as well, because I think that that's so important to just avoid the absolute cliff dive when it comes to these offensive numbers.
I completely agree with you there. Now, shifting gears real quick, can you give me a team that you have your eye on as the potential Cinderella this year? What's one team that maybe is flying under the radar, people aren't quite looking at, who you think you can make a deep run?
I do wind up having South Dakota State being able to make the Sweet 16. That's not necessarily a sleeper at this point because they're only a 2-point underdog right now against Providence. I think that they'd be able to match up very well against Iowa as well in a game which I certainly think that both teams would be able to get to 80 in that matchup if we do wind up getting South Dakota State versus Iowa. But I do think that Davidson has a chance to be able to make the Sweet 16 as well. They're going to be going up against a Duke bunch. I did not like what I wound up seeing from them on defense whatsoever. Their last 3 games with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, they were outside the top 300. So this is a Duke team that they are not playing any defense right now. Got a Davidson team that they do a good job of being able to slow the game down. They're in the bottom 40 with regards to total possessions per game. They've got good versatility. Someone like 6'10" Luka Bravic is able to shoot over 40% from 3. Hunjun Lee is 6'7", offers good versatility. And then Foster Loyer, the former Mr. Michigan basketball player, he has been able to do an absolutely terrific job of being able to run a consistent and just steady ship in general that doesn't turn the ball over a whole lot. I don't like the form that Duke wound up coming in, and I do feel like this being Coach K's last ride might actually work as a detriment because those players are going to be experiencing so much pressure in this tournament.
I think that's a really great point. I do think, it's Duke. The narrative is always they get a few favors from the officials. I think we'll see that, especially in Coach K's last ride, but I don't think that it can carry them all the way. This isn't one of the better 2 Duke teams we've seen. We saw that against Virginia Tech. We saw that against UNC. Even Syracuse kind of stuck around with them in their second matchup for a little while.
Considering they had a 3-man rotation, that actually wasn't bad at all.
Yeah, that was tremendous. We all thought, kiss it goodbye. But who knew? When you actually play with a point guard who's an actual point guard, your team's going to end up looking a little bit better than it did all season. But whatever. That's my gripe with Boeheim. Greg, last question for you here. We ask every guest on the show, what is the move? What is your favorite play for normally the day, but for this, let's go with the weekend. We've got the whole tournament. Take your pick. What are you going with?
Well, the DK Nation article that I mentioned a little bit earlier, that is going to be up in the morning. I do like Rutgers to be able to get the job done here against Indiana. And then if you're taking a look a little bit more at the NCAA tournament, I'm surprised that Montana State hasn't seen their number move as much. They wound up opening up right around a 15.5-point underdog against Texas Tech, and that stayed relatively stagnant to this point. Right now, I'm finding them in most markets being right around that 15.5-point underdog range. And I do think that they're going to be able to give a spirited effort. And I do think that they're going to be able to do a solid job in this spot. So I do think that catching the points here with Montana State, they're getting a couple too many. So I like between 15 and 15.5 with them.
All right, Montana State or Rutgers money line. Give me a pick between the two.
Well, since it is going to be taking place today, we're going to go with the Rutgers money line just because it is a little bit more immediate.
Sounds good to me. Greg, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can people catch all the awesome work you're doing?
At gunit_81 on Twitter. I post everything there, including the Coast to Coast Hoops podcast. You're able to find that wherever you get your podcast. On VSiN, I host a pair of shows, Betting the Bracket. You're able to catch that every Sunday from 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern time. And then the Greg Peterson Experience. That is from 1 to 4 a.m. Pacific time, or 1 to 4 a.m. Eastern time every Saturday and Sunday as well. And then with regards to the spreadsheet, handicap lines, everything, that's just all on Twitter at gunit_81.
Greg, thank you once again so much for joining us today. Best of luck for the entire tournament. I am sure you were going to kill it as always. It's been a pleasure, sir.
Tom, a lot of fun, my friend. Thank you.
Have a good one.
You as well. Thank you.
All right, guys, that's our show. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And of course, use the promo code DGEN for 20% off your FTN subscription. That's DGEN for 20% off at FTN. Our MLB DFS early bird package, it is out now. $175 to the first 50 purchasers. The next after that jumps up to $200. That's got the MLB optimizer, player ownership and projections, strikeout model, home run and stacks models, premium chat and content, so much more from all of our awesome guys. And of course, don't forget, join FTN's March Madness Bracket Challenge. We are giving away $1,500. A grand prize for first place is a grand. So enter with the link in the description below for your chance to win. Thank you so much once again to Greg for being here. Tune in tomorrow, guys. We will have Mike Kutry joining the show. It'll be a good one, so stay locked, and we will see you next episode.